slightly mad. I'm going slightly mad.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Aloysius. How are you? You're in my wrong hand. Hello, Aloysius. How are you? You're very well. That's very, very good. Do you like my t-shirt? Oh, you like my t-shirt? Her Infernal Majesty made me buy one. Yes, Janice and I are sharing it. Why? Because she said we couldn't wear her one. So we had to buy one in order to be able to wear one. It's good though. It's good. It's got a skull on it. It does, yes. Okay, so hello everybody. You know you can get these. You can buy one too. Her Infernal Majesty will make you. Yeah, she twisted our arms. It really hurt. I know, she's mean. Anyway, do you have a question for me? You have a question for me? Oh, goody. Well, before we get to the question, we have an exciting new book. This one, yes, the one with monsters in. Yes, is called The Bonehead Resistance, and it is out now. It's by Narelle King, and you can buy your copy on the Black Cockie Press website. So it's got monsters in, and it's set in Australia. So if you like urban contemporary fantasy, this would be just your thing. So, yes. Okay, so now, what's your question, Aloysius? Go back over here. What's your question, Aloysius? You read a story. Yes. You read lots of stories, Aloysius. Yes. Well, I read a story and it used real people. Oh, yes. And then I had a look at some other things that had real people. And I was wondering how exactly that works. How can you use a real person in a fictional story? That's a really good question, Aloysius. So how can you use real people in fictional stories? That's it, isn't it? Yes. So I know that a lot of people have been talking about the Netflix series, Blonde, and actually also a lot of people were talking about the Netflix series The Crown, where they are about real people. In the case of Blonde, it's Marilyn Monroe, but it's based off a novel by Joyce Carol Oates called Blonde. And the Netflix series The Crown, what's that based on? It's based on the royal family, the English royal family. And why were people getting a bit thingy about that? In particular, about Princess Diana. Yeah, they were getting very particular about how Princess Diana, how Prince Charles, who's now King Charles, and the Queen, and that were represented in terms of the the real history versus the fictionalized thing, because there's a whole load of things in The Crown. If you watch that, I haven't watched the whole thing. I've watched series 3 and 4 because they had Josh O'Connor in it, and that was the only thing I was Josh O'Connor and Olivia Colman. I wanted, and Helena Bonham Carter. Yeah. Josh O'Connor, Olivia Colman, and Helena Bonham Carter, who I wanted to see. Don't really care about the English royal family, but I do like those actors, so I watched those. I didn't watch the earlier stuff because, no. Claire Foy? No. Yeah, anyway. So, you are wondering about how that works, because there was a lot of controversy around that, because they are real people. Some of them are people who are still alive. Until very recently, the Queen was still alive. And so the question of what happens when you fictionalize a real live person came into it. Now, there is a really... And what did you read, Aloysius? You read a vampire story. You read a vampire story. Okay. How did that work? I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, you tell me in a minute. Okay, so when we have a look at using real people in fiction, there is a difference between using people who are alive versus using people who are dead. Now, this goes whether they are public figures or whether they are people in your own family or people you know. Yes. Okay. So if you are in Australia, where I am, you don't have guaranteed free speech. It's not a constitutional guarantee. And that has an impact on the way that writers can write about people who are alive. Yes. Now, how? Okay. In America, you have constitutionally guaranteed freedom of speech, which does give writers a degree of leeway. However, very similar things. If somebody takes enormous offence at something that you've written, they can sue you. Yes. And in Australia, defamation laws are extremely strong. Like, unbelievably strong. And that defamation laws generally protect powerful people because they're the ones who can afford to sue for defamation. Though, as people discovered, having slagged each other off on Facebook, A, Facebook is publishing, B, your neighbour can sue you for defamation because Australian laws work that way. So, you can get yourself in big trouble in this country doing that. So, if you are writing about somebody who is alive, a real person who is alive, that is more problematic than writing about a real person who is dead. Now, if you're writing about a real person who is alive, you have to be very careful about what you write. You have to be careful about how you depict them because they can, and in some cases will, sue you for defamation. Now, how do you manage the Crown? Okay, the Crown was working on the premise that the royal family, I think they're working on the premise that the royal family never say anything. That's actually how the royal family work. They never give a public opinion, and therefore the ability to use them is fairly, they felt that was going to be fairly safe. But there are Australian public figures who've had biopic thingies made about them, and they've got very upset, and they have sued. Like a certain mining magnate. Yes, like a certain mining magnate, whom we're not going to name at all. That's as far as we're going. Yes. Yes. So, certain people are going to be more litigious than others. So how do you write about real people? Okay, if the real person is alive, that's the more difficult legal-wise to deal with because a living person can sue you. So therefore, you can run close to, but not exactly parallel to. You can disguise someone, you can amalgamate people. That's possible. There are some things that you don't touch with a 40-foot pole, though. Some people you just do not touch. You don't even go close to because it's just dangerous. But if they're people in your own life, disguise them heavily. The advantage of that is most people don't even recognize themselves when they're put into a book. They don't, because everyone's perception of themselves is from within, not from without. If you take big things from their life, then yes, but if you take how you perceive them, chances are they're not going to know that that's how you perceive them, unless you use their full proper name. If you do that, you're probably going to piss them off. So, or on the side of caution. Side of caution, yes. Okay, or on the side of caution if you're using real live people, especially if you know them. If they're famous people, oh, that's yes, skating on thin ice. Can be really skating on thin ice. Now, what about dead people? What about dead people? Well, the thing you will like to know about dead people is it is impossible to defame the dead. Therefore, the dead are open game, open season on the dead. Like, genuinely. The estate might get upset about the depiction of if they're recently enough dead. The estate of that person may get upset about how they're depicted, but they don't really have any legal recourse behind them, I don't think. You know, they can kick up a fuss, but if you didn't infringe copyright, chances are they don't have a great deal of ability to do anything about pulling your work or attacking you for creating it, because you cannot defame the dead. That is the way things stand. So that's where something like Marilyn, or actually even the depiction of Princess Diana in something like Spencer, or even The Crown, because she's been dead for a long while now. Okay, she's been dead for over 20 years. So it's been a long time. I actually remember where I was when she died. Yeah, I do. That's my moon landing. I really would have rathered a moon landing. I actually also remember Challenger. Why is it my memories are like bad things like that and Chernobyl? No moon landing. We didn't get moon landing. No. Bloody boomers. I know. They got moon landing. I know. Anyway. For dead people, you can't defame the dead. Therefore, what they have, using them in fiction, is actually up for grabs. So, Blonde, which is based on the Joyce Carol Oates novel, big chunky novel that she wrote, and it's now been turned into a film, is free to use Marilyn Monroe as she likes, because it's obviously fictional and you can't defame the dead. Now, the controversy comes from the fact that by cherry-picking Marilyn's life and choosing the most scandalous and atrocious elements of her life to make her seem the most tragic character, the most disempowered, the most tragic character, it does colour public opinion. So what you're saying is, well, you can't actually defame the dead. You can put misinformation out into the public that could colour their opinion of the real person. Yeah, that is really the big that's the big thing about using real people that people get offended by, is the legacy. Now, what was the book you read? I read a book, yes. You know how I like horror? Yes. It had vampires in it, yes. And Buster Keaton. Oh, we read the same thing then. Yes. We're not going to name it, are we? No, we're not going to name it because it was a self-publish by someone, and admittedly, they had a lot of love for actually Buster Keaton. It was a really, really well researched book. Yes, it was. Yes, it was actually a really well researched book. However, for all its research and for all its digging into the life of Buster Keaton, did it work? Okay, Here's a question, Aloysius. If it didn't have Buster Keaton in it, would you have read it? Oh, God, no. Yeah. I'm afraid that was sort of the issue. Is this was a case of taking a life, a real live person, and inserting it into a book in which, yeah, he meets two lady vampires and let's say hijinks ensue. But it's not a comedy. No, it's not a comedy. It's actually got quite a lot of violence in it, and yeah, that scene we're not forgetting in a long while. No. But I think one of the things that you can say about that is it proves my point that no two people see the same person. What do you mean? Well, the Buster Keaton in that book, yes. Does that resemble the Buster Keaton you have read about in the biography? No, not really. The shape of the life is the same, but not really. No, like, one of the things about the real Buster Keaton, one of the things that's actually really admirable about him is, in spite of the fact that he had two wives who were not the greatest, one could say, being charitable, yes. Well, the second was definitely a blood-sucking vampire. I'm just saying, when you're a nurse, taking advantage of a patient like that, especially when they're very, very, very incapacitated by alcohol, is deeply unethical. Yes. So yeah, that problem. But Buster Keaton was never heard to speak ill of either of those women publicly. No. Even I don't think even privately he spoke ill of either of them. No. Which is something that is very admirable in the real man, but something that is missed in this novel, where he does speak less charitably about his first wife, who in the novel he's currently married to, and that doesn't sound that sounds a lot like an authorial voice coming in and inserting itself into their character, saying things that they would like for him to say. Yes, and that is sort of a thing about when you write about a real person, is how much is the real person and how much is your concept of the real person. Yes, yeah. Remember that movie. Oh God, it was so bad. Remember that movie we watched called Bill, that was supposed to be about Shakespeare? That god-awful one with the Spanish Inquisition. Yeah. The god-awful one with the Spanish, well, it wasn't the Spanish Inquisition, but the Spanish spies and stuff, as though it was sort of like the Spanish Armada, which did not coincide with Shakespeare being in London. The Spanish Armada predated Shakespeare being in London. Just saying. Yeah, well, remember that. And remember how, and it was made by, I think that was made by the Horrible Histories people. I don't like them. They're not very funny. They're not very clever. And we watched that, yes. And it was god-awful, yes. And when we got to the end of it, what did we sort of decide about that? That it didn't work, no. And they were clearly trying to be pythons. Oh, hell yeah, they were true. They wanted to be pythons. Oh, God, yeah, they wanted to be pythons. Yeah. And it was just, it didn't even follow known facts. about anything. It was just a bunch of silly juvenile jokes. It was just a bunch of silly juvenile jokes. Now, you mentioned pythons. Yeah, pythons. Now, Life of Brian. Yes. Life of Brian is one of the funniest movies that the Pythons ever made. It's one of the funniest movies ever. Bankrolled by George Harrison. Yay, best Beatle. You're more of a John. Really? You're more of a John person. Okay, I would have taken you for a Ringo. Oh, John. Okay. Okay, yeah, sure. You can be John. I don't have a problem with you being John. It's the glasses. Oh, it's the glasses. You like the glasses, do you? Yeah, okay. Anyway, take the Life of Brian. Yes. Now, if I was going to fix that god-awful movie Bill, yes, I would have taken the Life of Brian approach. What did the Pythons do with the Life of Brian? The Life of Brian, yes, is a parallel life to the life of Jesus in the Gospels. Yes. Now, that had extraordinary controversy over it because people misread that film thinking that they were mocking, from a lot of religious people thinking that they were mocking Jesus. But they weren't mocking Jesus. What were they mocking? They were mocking a whole load of stuff around that and religion and all sorts of things. Yes, that was never going to get a good hearing with ultra-religious people. But it works because Brian is living a parallel life. Now, if I was going to fix that movie Bill, yes, I would have taken an inept playwright in a rival theatre company and run it as a parallel to the Globe so that you obliquely see Shakespeare and Burbage and the Globe and you see this great theatre company, very popular theatre company, and they're an active rival to this crappy little theatre company and this character who lives a parallel life to Shakespeare. So that you can explore the same things, but you can have your stupid ass jokes because this isn't Shakespeare. Yes. Yeah, that would have worked better. You would still have been using the real person and you would have been using the audience's understanding of the real person to create your comedy the way that Brian does in The Life of Brian. Yes. Yes. So what about the Buster Keaton book? That one, I think that one was a case of it bit off more than it could chew. You could write a novel that looked at Buster Keaton's life or part of his life or whatever you wanted to do. That would be really interesting. I mean, he had a fascinating life. There is plenty in there for a writer to use should they want to. Any life is. However, I think the combination of Buster Keaton and vampires, didn't work so well, especially since Keaton was a comedian and vampires actually didn't really come into cinema-going consciousness, especially US cinema-going consciousness, until about 1931 with Dracula and Bela Lugosi. Like, Bela Lugosi is your vampire. Now, if you want to tell a vampire story, do a parallel with Bela Lugosi. Have Bela Lugosi playing Dracula in the cinema and have him hunted by actual vampires, or you could actually make it really funny and have him hunted by misguided vampire hunters from Europe who don't fully understand cinema yet, from some backwater somewhere. That could be really, really funny. You could call it Hunting Bela Lugosi. So you could do that. Not a problem. Absolutely not a problem to do that with a character. However, you have to be careful to make sure that the concept fits the person, not the other way around. By the way, that Hunting Bela Lugosi, idea, that's out there. You can have that. That's my gift to you, because I'm not going to use that one. I really don't know enough about Bela Lugosi, and I'm not really interested in finding out. So if there's a book out there that if somebody ends up deciding, I want to write the Bela Lugosi vampire story, send it along to us. We'll love to have a read of it. So, but that's how you look at using people in real life. You be very careful of using live people because of defamation laws. You are going to want to put people into situations that work contextually for them. You're going to have to understand that your version of a character is not necessarily the real version of the character, nor other fans' version of that character. And that there are certain characters who people are incredibly protective over, and that has an impact on how something would be received. Marilyn Monroe, people can be quite protective of. Princess Diana, people can be quite protective of. I like Marilyn Monroe. I don't like Princess Diana. I'm not going to write anything about Princess Diana because I get lynched in the street going with my view. Okay. Parallel lives are a really great way if you want to incorporate someone, but you don't know that much about them. That sort of oblique referencing so that their real existence creates meaning for your story, but your focus of your story is on someone else, is a great way to have a go at writing real people into your fiction, or heavily, heavily, heavily disguise them. So I hope that helped everybody. Did that help you, Aloysius? Yes, that helped you with understanding how this works? Yes? Okay, so we're going to go now, and I wish you happy writing. So, bye-bye. Bye-bye. You want to say bye-bye? Bye-bye. De Volker Finger, ich bin ja, ich muss sa. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.